Why was my mic muted? Okay, now you can hear me. Don't know why my mic was muted. Okay, now you can hear me, I guess. Alrighty, so tonight we are going to be talking about it's kind of a part two to my last show, which was, that's not it. Kind of a part two to my last show, which was talking about. Okay, good. So we in there. We're good. Now that I have unmuted, we are good to go. So my last show was kind of touching on the feminist movement and how us feminists thought we were doing something just, allowed a lot that we were not really bargaining for. And I think this news anchor says it best. So before I go there, I'm going to go here. Let me just make sure you guys can see that. Trying it again.
I'm not going to say you're a woman, but you're a trans woman.
This is what messes me up every time. Let's make sure it works. So while this is loading, because sometimes, my technical difficulties tend to get the better of me, but while this is loading, I was saying that this was kind of a follow-up to the last show, which touched on the transgender movement and how it relates to the feminist movement and how it relates to the transgender. Why does it keep muting?
Use your pronouns of choice,
and how much was kind of slid through that was not really the purpose, and how much we thought we were being inclusive and understanding. And, the feminist movement started out, of course, as a worthy cause. And now I wouldn't even really call it a feminist movement anymore, simply because it's not for the betterment of women. It's for the betterment of anyone. And she kind of sums it up best. So I'll go ahead and play.
I'm not going to say you're a woman, but you're a trans woman. And now I am realizing that all of those things are gateway drugs to the co-opting of female sports and the word female and the word woman and breastfeeding and childbearing and menstruation, all the things that are under solidly the list of what is a woman. You don't know the first thing about being a woman. You have no idea what the average woman has been through the course of her life, the challenges we have, the beauty of being a woman, the softness of being a woman, and you never will. And I'm done engaging in this fiction, Paul. I'm done. I have empathy, I have compassion, but I am not willing to abandon truth in the name of sparing feelings. I started off being like,
and I think we all can agree with that sentiment. I think we all are pretty much there. We all started out thinking this was a worthy cause. We all started out thinking, let's be inclusive. Let's make everyone feel like they're, heard and seen and what have you. And now I can't really even say that that's what we're dealing with. And unfortunately, that blurring of what's real and what's true has led us into where we are today. And now we are in a place where our spaces as women are no longer protected. And one of those spaces, which is sacred, I would say, is our bathrooms. That's the place that we go, and we're very vulnerable because, obviously the nature of what's done in that place. And just to even think and consider someone being there with malice intent is scary, And I say our spaces in the title because we're all at risk. All of us women are no longer protected. Our protection has gone out the window for the sake of affirming an illusion. And that kind of brings me to what the show topic was about. So, this man here, I wouldn't say he was leading the fight to make all bathrooms gender neutral, but in his town in the UK, he was. Um, Most of us have never even heard his name, never even seen his face because he's not from here. But he became an elected official, and his first thing that he decided to put into play was to try to make gender neutral bathrooms a thing. And so let's dive right into that. So Sisyphus Debbie Taylor tweeted, "I wonder what his motivation was." Following his election, he petitioned Middlesbrough Mayor Andy Preston to trial gender neutral toilets at Middlesbrough Council. So, as I said, this was his first act. As soon as he got in, he hit the ground running. This is what he wanted to do. This is what he thought was important as him an elected official, was making bathrooms gender neutral. And that's his name, David Smith. And it was soon found out he was in he was an elected official for about 2 months, and then it was found out that in the years before he was elected, he chose to sexually abuse children. So again, what was his motivation? An ex-counselor convicted of child sex abuse has been jailed for 12 years. Okay. David Smith of Middlesbrough was found guilty following a trial at Teesside Crown Court last month of 11 charges of inciting or engaging in sexual activity with a child. The offenses dated back more than a decade. Smith, 33, represented the Colby Newham ward, but resigned from the Conservative Party and council following his arrest, which is funny because, as we all know, no conservative is toting for gender neutral bathrooms. So he is, as Citizen Mayor would say, a rhino Republican. Republican in name only. So in June 2019, Smith, who had been elected the month before, so 1 month, I gave him 2 months. He was an elected official for 1 month, apologized for comments he made to the Middlesbrough FC fan page, Fly Me to the Moon, in which he referred to people on benefits as rotten pond life families that should be sterilized and washed. Great. So 1 month he was an elected official and he couldn't even hold his tongue. Okay. Those who believe you should use the bathroom that corresponds to your biological sex are one enemy lighter this week as local British politician who pushed gender neutral bathrooms was arrested on child sex crimes. According to the BBC, Middlesbrough Council member David Smith was arrested for what the broadcaster called a string of sex offenses. Smith, 30, was a 33 because the last article said 33, was just elected in May, but he's managed to alienate both supporters of his Conservative Party base and liberals. On the liberal front, he was forced to apologize after making a comment on social media that welfare recipients were rotten pond life families that should be sterilized and washed. As for conservatives, both with a capital and lowercase c, he convinced the mayor of North Ward. Oh, goodness gracious, sorry guys. Woo to the side. He convinced the mayor of the North Yorkshire city to give gender neutral toilets a shot. I mean, there's no vowels. Like, how do you even pronounce that? Oh, that's counselor. That's the abbreviation. I thought that was somebody's name. Like, what? Councillor Smith had called for Middlesbrough to become a gender neutral town and asked the mayor to make a start by designating all council buildings' toilets as gender neutral. Middlesbrough went a different route. The local authority is planning to roll out the changes in council buildings by making disabled toilets open access, while maintaining gender specific toilets. Hmm. So they're using the disabled toilets to make this so. That's interesting. It's pretty messed up. This morning I had a conservative meeting with the mayor of on this topic of gender neutral toilets. I very much look forward to working with the mayor to deliver a positive environment for all the citizens in Middlesborough, he said after his meeting with the mayor. Over the last 24 hours, I have listened and read the public's concern, but I maintain the view that gender neutral toilets does not increase the threat to public safety. In fact, gender neutral toilets already exist in Middlesbrough, such as Starbucks, to very little fuss, he added. So this was after, of course, the charges came out on Smith, and they're defending the fact that they already put in these toilets. This is all about creating a positive environment for everyone to use facilities without fear or humiliation, which I just find this to be so interesting that anytime you read an article about this topic where they want to, allow men trying to get into um, biological men's spaces, you know. So anytime you see a story about this, there's always some line somewhere about how they need this because without it they're gonna be abused. What? No sound again? Ugh, crap. Don't know what's happening. Topic where they want they need this. Don't know they want oh, citizen man. Messing me up, sir. Thank you though. Thank you. Okay. It does. There's a lot of shifting though. I don't know why. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna sit very still. So, yeah. There's always some line somewhere about how they need these rights. They need to insert themselves into these spaces because without it, they're gonna be abused. There's gonna be humiliation. There's gonna be some type of harm brought upon their person. When we look at it and we look at the numbers, we look at the statistics, more likely than not, they are the ones causing the violence. They are the ones targeting natural born women. They are the ones that are choosing violence, quite honestly. So it's interesting to hear. It's like I guess interesting is the wrong word to use. It's gaslighting. It's ridiculous to hear that, they want access into these spaces so that they can feel quote unquote safe when their presence in these spaces is making women, the people who deserve to be there, unsafe. Not just feel unsafe, but actually unsafe. And as I continue to read, we'll see why. Starbucks, you must admit, is somewhat different than a public building. At the time, the move incurred some token opposition, mostly over how it was done with little consultation. Two men have a meeting and a decision is made to introduce gender-free toilet trial. No conclusion. Why does it still need pointing out? You do not have to be a wheelchair user to use a disabled toilet. So not only are they trying to invade or successfully invading women's spaces, but now they're invading disabled people's toilets, which apparently were separate and designated for disabled people, as they should be. At the moment, anyhow, it doesn't look like Smith is going to be doing any more pushing for gender neutral facilities, given that his hands are going to be full with court appearances. Smith, who was charged with 9 counts of sexual touching of a child, is due in court on August 7th. He's already resigned from the Middlesbrough Council Consecutive Group and Conservative Group and the Conservative Party with immediate effect. Again, he's not a conservative. I completely reject these. Well, I don't believe he is. These spurious allegations and remove yourself from the party will ensure I can focus all my efforts on fighting to clear my name, Smith said, and presumably not fighting to install gender neutral toilets, which they've already started to install. So, a little more on the background of his story. So again, UK local politician who campaigned for gender neutral toilets stands on trial on child sex abuse. A former counselor who argued for implementing gender neutral spaces in his community is on trial facing a series of child sex abuse charges. David Smith, 33, represented the Colby Newham ward on Middlesbrough Council following an election victory in May of 2019. 2 months later, 2 months later, so I was right. 2 months later, he faced a slew of child sex abuse related charges. He stepped down from the Conservative Party in July of 2019 and ultimately resigned from the council altogether in 2020. While initially charged with 9 counts of sexual touching of a child, Smith is now defending against 11 counts, stemming from 2 victims, both of which allege the abuse took place about a decade ago while they were young boys. The first victim came forward in 2016 after experiencing great emotional distress related to his past issue, and finally opening up to his partner and mother about the ordeal before going to the police. A second victim was introduced after the first charge. After the first charges had been established. That was weird. Okay. According to Teesside Live, Smith groomed the first victim by showering him with gifts and trips before progressively subjecting him to increasing sexual abuses. Smith allegedly spent up to 10,000 euros, approximately $13,000, on the boy in an attempt to keep him quiet. Smith's trial extended its second session today with the being played audio of the first victim's interview with police. In the recording, the victim described how Smith asked him, "Do you like it?" after raping him, how he once woke up to Smith abusing him. The victim also noted he witnessed pornographic content on Smith's computer, which included sexual exploitation materials featuring boys as young as 10 years old. Smith from behind a I'm sorry, wow. I just saw the S and just went with it, sorry. Speaking from behind a privacy screen, the victim told the court today that when the grooming had begun, he was too young to know it was wrong, but developed a sense as he got older. Charges related to a second victim include Smith attempting to persuade the child to engage in sexual activity by inviting him to touch the adult man's genitals. The court was also told that Smith had allegedly been linked to fake social media profile in which he also sent a message to a young girl. During his 2019 campaign and subsequent elections, Smith affirmed that he was an advocate of the LGBTQ community, and one of his first moves, once taking office, was to petition the mayor to abolish single-sex toilets in town buildings. Now, I think it's pretty obvious what his motivation was to go back to what that tweet said in the beginning. I mean, obviously he had an attraction to young girls and young boys, and being able himself to go into a female bathroom would allow him access to young girls, which is pretty horrific to think about. So, I mean, it's obvious what people like him are looking to do and why this was the first thing he decided. I left this up because this has nothing to do with the story, but this man just creeped me out, and he has that look that Citizen Man talks about, that speckled frog look where you just look at him and you know something ain't right. Like, oh my god, he's creepy. At the time, Smith stated, through my god, sorry, through my time interaction with local transgender and non-binary people, I've seen firsthand the difficulties faced by these individuals when accessing public toilets and changing rooms, adding across the country, pubs, shopping centers, universities, and schools are becoming gender neutral to ensure our transgender and non binary family and friends feel safe. There's that word again when using the facilities. And again, when you think about it, right, everything is so upside down and on its head nowadays that if there was somebody that wanted access to people like this, they would not need to lurk in the bathroom and wait for them to come in, like assuming that, um, assuming that the all gender bathrooms things wasn't a thing and we kept it how it's supposed to be, where if you have a penis you're in a male bathroom and if you have a vagina you're in a female bathroom, right? There would be no reason that biological men, because that's the assumption, would have to target these transgender women. I guess I'll give them that tonight. We'll see how long that stands. There's no reason that they would have to target them, because if that's what they wanted to do, they could literally put on a dress and do the same thing, you know, especially again with how the world is right now today. So, how is it that they need these facilities to feel safe? How is it that they need these facilities to feel safe when, like I said, they are the one going into the opposite gender bathroom and targeting people in there? The politician went on to state that risk does not increase once public toilet becomes gender neutral. In fact, if anyone has an intention on committing a crime at present, they will do so. So this person is defending, of course, the gender neutral bathroom and stating that nothing's going to happen. And if somebody wanted to do something, they would do it. Kind of the opposite of what I just said. Smith's campaign was backed by LGBT charity Hart Gables and was ultimately successful with an attempt being launched shortly after, in which toilets intended for persons with disabilities were converted into all gender facilities for a period of time. Ridiculous. So people who have disabilities, who I would assume if they needed a specific toilet are in a wheelchair of some sort, their bathrooms are being converted into all gender facilities because these people can't decide if they want to stand up or sit down. That's ridiculous. Smith's trial at the Teesside, and then look what they're doing with it. Smith's trial at the Teesside Court, Crown Court, will be continued in the coming days. His defense firmly denies the charges levied against him and rejects all claims as having never occurred at all. Wow. So it's like you didn't see it. You did not see what you thought you saw. Children that I abused, it didn't happen. Now, I thought this was interesting. Speaking of pedophile, this just kind of popped up in my search that um, they want to strike anti pedophile language from the state statutes, the Democrats. So, Republicans plan to introduce an amendment to clarify that adults with a physical or sexual attachment to children are not a protected class under the Human Rights Act. I think that's pretty simple, right? Why would you be protected for your sexuality, no matter what it is, right? Why would that be something that allows you protection? Minnesota Democrats want to remove language from the state's Human Rights Act, which clarifies that pedophilia is not included in the protected sexual orientation class. So right now it's definitively saying that pedophilia is not protected, and they want to remove that. Sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult, the Human Rights Act says. HF 1655, a bill carried by Republican Leah Fink, seeks to remove that language from state statutes. Proponents of the change argue that the current language perpetuates a stereotype that gay people are attracted to children, according to House research information provided to Alpha News. Fink's bill, dubbed the Take Pride Act, was incorporated into the House Omnibus Civil Law Policy Bill, which is scheduled for a Tuesday floor vote. Republicans plan to introduce an amendment to clarify that adults with a physical or sexual attraction to children are not a protected class under the Human Rights Act. Under the Human Rights Act, the definition of sexual orientation says that sexual orientation does not include physical or sexual attraction to children by an adult, or more simply described, pedophilia. The Democrats' decision to strike this language is disturbing and explicable, said House Minority Leader Leah DeMuth, Republican, said in a statement. House Republicans will be presenting an amendment today to clarify that pedophilia is absolutely not a protected class under the Human Rights Act, which should be simple, but we have we have a pedophile president, so it is what it is. Of course, they're going to try to protect these people. We sincerely hope Democrats. Where was I? Oh shoot. We sincerely hope Democrats will join us in ensuring our children are protected. Fink's bill also includes an updated definition of gender identity, which is defined as a person's inherent sense of being a man, woman, both, or neither. A person's gender identity, and I thought this part was interesting because it's kind of like they take something good and they got to add a splash of bad. They have to add a splash of, I guess, getting the Democrats to shut up. Because the bill also includes an updated definition of gender identity, which is defined as a person's inherent sense of being a man, woman, both, or neither. A person's gender identity may or may not correspond to their assigned sex at birth or to their primary or secondary sex characteristics. A person's gender identity is not necessarily visible to others, the new definition states. Department of Human Rights Commissioner Rebecca Luciero testified in support of the standalone bill during a March 7th hearing. It's a bill that's been long overdue. Other provisions in the bill seek to strengthen sexual orientation and gender identity protections in housing and ensure that nonprofits follow non discrimination laws. So the bill itself, it kind of had a noble cause. Stating that we're not stating that pedophiles are a protected class, but then of course they got to add this little bit at the end to help it to pass through, in my opinion, because I mean, you see just from this article how much pushback that it's getting. Okay, and Citizen Man said gay people are attracted to kids. I knew it. Shaking my head. I think that's what they were trying to fight against. The Democrats didn't like that it was suggesting that, but I didn't really see how it suggested that. But just like anything else, their misdirection, their mischaracterization in order to, make things sound a certain way so that if you agree with it, it's kind of like you're a bad person for doing so, you know? Okay, so kind of lost my train of thought. Let me go back. Yeah, once they started, Citizen Man said once they started with the LGBT kids crap, it was more than obvious. Yeah, absolutely. They've been targeting our kids. So going more into the whole, so again, they've been pushing this whole gender neutral bathroom. They've been pushing this whole allowing men into women's spaces. And they keep toting that there's no malintent behind it. There's no, we're not looking to hurt anyone. And our people are not, pedophiles or anything of the sort. However, we're seeing we're seeing more and more of this happening now more than ever, right? So again, here's another example. Now I touched on these articles a little bit on my last show, just to kind of prove the point that this whole gender neutral bathroom thing is not as safe as they told it to be. So just to give you guys a little more of the details of what exactly these stories are. Now they're a little bit older, so you guys might have heard of them before, but just want to give you a little bit more details here. Judge rules Loudoun County teen sexually assaulted female student in girls' bathroom, and it's happening way too often. Ruling on the case that has seized national attention and reinvigorated debate over parental rights in public education, a Virginia juvenile court judge concluded Monday that a transgender teenager sexually assaulted a female student in a Loudoun County high school in May. Chief Judge Pamela L. Brooks found there was sufficient evidence to determine the individual guilty of sexual assault. The decision comes after the Daily Wire spoke to the victim's father, who said the male student forcibly sodomized his ninth grade daughter. Ninth grade, that is horrible. In a school bathroom while wearing a skirt. When the father attempted to describe and protest the incident at the local school board meeting, he was arrested for disorderly conduct, allowing the school abuse to stay underground for months. In the interim, the Loudoun County School Board passed a sweeping gender inclusivity policy allowing students to use restrooms and locker rooms as well as compete in sports according to their gender identity rather than biological sex. The alleged gender fluidity of the perpetrator was not raised during the hearing, according to the New York Times. Although court documents confirmed the offender was wearing a skirt when the assault took place, in court, the 15-year-old girl testified that she engaged in consensual sexual activity with the defendant two different times in a girls' bathroom at Stonebridge High School, but on a subsequent occasion was violently coerced into performing sexual acts. Many parents in the district were enraged to discover that the teenager remained enrolled in the school system while the case was pending at a local law enforcement at, and local law enforcement conducted an investigation. In a statement released earlier this month, LCPS said it was obligated to defer the initial criminal investigation to local law enforcement before conducting its own probe. The district also said it must follow the Title IX grievance process before taking disciplinary action against the accused student, clarifying that it will impose interim measures to protect the safety of students involved in the original incident, de- mm, deter retaliation. Oh, I read that all weird, sorry. Clarifying it will impose interim measures to protect the safety of the students involved in the original incident. Deter retaliation. That's still weird there, I'm sorry. The Loudoun County rape case has become a focal point in the heated Virginia gubernatorial race. Republican Glenn Youngkin has called for an investigation into the school board's handling of the incident and defended parent involvement in public education more broadly, drawing a contrast to his Democratic adversary who suggests parents should not be involved in school curriculum decisions before backtracking in a recent ad. And that's something they've been trying to get and do for a while, try to eliminate the parents' involvement more and more. And this was 2001, but now it's even worse. And I'm sure you guys have heard the stories of teachers getting fired for saying what a student has told them and the school board didn't like it. Um, Teachers being obviously encouraged to keep the gender that a student is. I'm so sorry guys, just give me 1 second. No, I think I'm good. Sorry about that. So teachers being encouraged to keep the quote unquote gender identity of a student a secret from the parents, obviously if it's not in line with their biological gender. um just things like that. Like they have been slowly trying to drive a wedge in between a parent and student in schools for a long time. And if it's not to get into the bathrooms, here's another reason that, these transgender people want access to female spaces so that they can now go to female prisons. And I remember hearing about things like this as a joke, like growing up, that a man would much rather be in a prison full of women. And just to think that we live in a world now that this is possible and that nobody's looking at the fact that these are all the negative effects to all of these new policies that we're allowing. Women are no longer safe, not even when they're locked in a cage. A transgender Rikers inmate raped a female prisoner while in the women's section of the jail and has been sentenced to 7 years, officials said Monday. Ramel Blount, 33, who goes by Diamond Blount, pleaded guilty to attempted rape April 7th in an apparent plea deal. Investigators say Blount, who was housed in the female section of the facility, approached a 33-year-old female inmate in the bathroom at the Rose M. Singer Center February 8, 2001, after the victim had just finished showering. Blunt held the victim down by the back of her neck and raped her, officials said. The victim reported the incident to jail officials, and a rape kit was administered, which matched Blunt's DNA in the New York State Registry. Blunt received 7 years prison sentence with an additional 8 years of post-release supervision. An order of protection was issued, and Blunt must register as a sex offender. Well, I mean, at least he had some type of repercussions because if you look at it as a whole, they're pretending like these things are not even happening. Sexual violence against anyone is unacceptable. Bronx, my goodness, English. Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark said in a statement. Meanwhile, violence continues to plague the notorious Rikers facility. Federal prosecutors have threatened to request that the Department of Correction be taken over by an independent body if the agency doesn't improve conditions at the city-run jail. Last year, 16 people died in DOC custody, more than in 2019 and 2020 combined, and the most fatalities since 2016. So it's getting better and better. The DOC has reported 3 deaths so far this year. Last week, Mayor Eric Adams begged New Yorkers to give him a chance to fix the situation at the 10 facility jail complex, which is home to more than 5,000 inmates. DOC Commissioner Luis Molina promised to bring safety and order back to Rikers after he was appointed by Adams. But jailhouse sources told the Post chaos and violence is still running rampant. So perfect time to, it's already crazy and there's already more people dying than they've seen in years. And, it just sounds like the perfect time to allow men to cross into female spaces. Why not? And yet another case of a child molester, a pedophile that is allowed into a space that he should not be allowed into. California trans child molester 26 gets 2 years in juvenile facility thanks to progressive DA Gaskin. And that's him. Looks like it. He's got that same look that they all got. A Los Angeles County judge on Thursday ordered Hannah Tubbs, that's what he's going by now, a transgender California woman, to serve 2 years at a juvenile facility after she pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl in 2014. Before doing so, the judge criticized far-left District Attorney George Gaston, whose office declined to prosecute the repeat offender as an adult. So he got a lesser sentence. Tubbs, 26, recently pleaded guilty to molesting the girl in a woman's bathroom 8 years ago, when Tubbs, who was 2 weeks away from turning 18 at the time of the crime, she identified as a male and went by James Tubbs. He did not identify as a female until after he was taken into custody, according to prosecutors. Of course. Of course he didn't identify as female until he was taken into custody. It does nothing but benefit him to quote unquote identify as female now that he's in jail. Because guess what? Now he has a chance to, just like the last article, still continue to do what he was doing on the outside while he's in jail. So why the heck would he not? I mean, I remember back in the day, they would always say that rapists get it the worst in jail because the men in jail do the same stuff to them that they were doing on the outside to women. So, what better way for him to not only get away from those people who want to try to do to him what he's doing to women, but also allow him to keep playing into his perverted fantasies with the women that are locked up in prison who they're locked in so they can't go anywhere, can they? It's ridiculous. So this whole story is kind of talking about how he got a lesser sentence because of Gaston's policy, and Tubbs was 17 at the time that he was convicted. So I'm gonna kind of skip through this one, but to sum it up, Corbin Carson said a judge gave a 26-year-old who molested a 10-year-old girl in 2014 2 years in a juvenile facility. Judge, his hands are tied because LA County DA Gaston would not try the 17-year-old as an adult. James Tubbs does not have to register as a sex offender, and had he been tried as an adult, he could have gotten 8 to 12 years, which I think would have been more fitting for what he did. And that's DA Gaston. I don't know why I cut so much of this article. I don't really think it's a long one. Goodness gracious. So I'll just read this last line. Because of George Gaston's blanket policy against transferring any juvenile to adult court, even if the 17-year-old rapes or murders an innocent child, James Tubbs will not have to register as a sex offender, will not spend any time in county jail or state prison, will be 26 and housed with juveniles for a very short period of time, and will be released with no probation or parole monitoring. The victims will get no justice. The public will get no safety. And quite honestly, now they're putting those juveniles that he's in prison with at risk because he's already shown that he's capable of this behavior. This was a complete failure on the justice system's part. Like, I don't even understand what they were trying to accomplish here. He was accused of this crime years after it was done, so now he's an adult. But we're going to house him in jail with juveniles? I mean, and then he gets tried as a juvenile because he was 17, which I would say is a technicality because of what he did. And even if he gets 2 years, that 2 years should be served with other adults. He's no longer a juvenile, so he should not be going to juvenile prison. That's crazy. And to segue, here is a tweet by Charlie Kirk. Trans people say misgendering someone is violence. So again, they just jump to violence because they're in such danger of someone harming them when nobody's really trying to harm them. All we all are trying to do, quite honestly, is stay safe from them and their violence. Because a man is a man. I don't care if he's wearing a dress. That strength is different. Dylan Mulvaney thinks misgendering him should be illegal. Biological men believe it's their right to use the same bathroom as little girls, just like David Smith, right? That's exactly what he wanted to do, get access to same-sex bathrooms. That's why he toted for it so loudly, so that he could get in there with little girls. Male athletes think it's their right to dominate women on the playing field. Now, on that note, can I zoom in? Yeah, I can zoom in. So this is a story that I've been posting about and talking about for a while. So if you follow me, if you're on my IG, then you would have seen me posting some of these. I did not mean to zoom in that much. And so basically it's about this swimmer, Riley Gaines, and she had to swim against Leah Thomas. I got it right. And this is her reaction. And no, it's not because you can't hear it. Hold on, let's try that again. Keep forgetting to unmute this thing. Okay, let's unmute it first.
When we tied, Leah Thomas and I, we actually tied in the 200 freestyle. We go behind the awards podium where they hand out the trophies and you're kind of paraded out. The NCAA official looks at me and says, "Great job. You guys tied. We only have one trophy and we're going to give it to Leah." And so I press him and I say, "Okay, can I ask you why you're giving this trophy to Leah?" And he said, "Well, for photo purposes, Leah has to have it." And so in that moment, I felt like, of course, I knew what was happening was wrong. But in that moment, I felt like we as women were being mocked. We were being reduced to a photo op to validate the feelings of and the identity of a man. When we tied, Leah Thomas and I, we actually tied in the 200 freestyle.
And she's absolutely right. She was being mocked. She spent her whole academic career training for this moment, training to make it to the Olympics, training to get that medal. And she finally does, and she's beat by a biological man. She's beat by a man in, well, he's not in a dress, but a man claiming to be a woman with all the everything that makes him a man. He went through puberty as a man. So how is that fair? And then not only that, he swam with men. So he trained with other men before he even joined and before he even chose to now quote unquote identify as a woman. So he competed at that level and he was still able to come into women's space and compete against women. And the craziest part is she tied with him. So that shows you how hardcore she was, how great of a swimmer she really truly was, that she was able to, or I'm sorry, is that she was able to tie with a biological man. And then when it's all said and done, she gets spit in the face by them telling her that you're not even going to get the trophy. We have to give it to him. Because let's be real. We have to give it to him because, we have to take pictures. We have to have the photo op so the world can see how accepting we are and how woke we are, which is utterly ridiculous. Like, can you even imagine the thing that you've been working for your whole life to be taken away from you? And then these people claim themselves to be feminist. How can we call this feminism when feminism started because women were being oppressed, right? It started because women didn't have rights. So how is this any different? How are women not still being oppressed by men? Now the men want to call themselves women, but it's still an oppression of women, of actual women, because you're coming into our spaces and you're abusing us and you are taking over by standing in front of us when this is our space. This is another video of Riley Gaines' reaction to Leah Thomas and giving us a little more insight of what it was like. I almost forgot to unmute, guys. Giving us a little insight of what that was like.
Comfort in the locker room when you turn around and there's a male watching you undress while
what is this world coming to? You can't do that.
my teammates and I were forced to compete against a biological male named Leah Thomas. Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division after competing as a member of the University of Pennsylvania's men's swim team for 3 years. Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle, which ended up in a tie. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. Having only one trophy, the NCAA told me that I would go home empty-handed and this trophy would go to Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male who was fully intact with male genetics.
Hold on. What did she just say?
Who was fully intact with male genetics. Let me be clear. We were not forewarned. We were not asked for our consent.
Hold on. Are you telling me that they let a 6'4" swinging ding ding in there because he identified as a woman and they forced to deal with that? Dude, that is lawsuit material.
Can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there's...
Yes, that's the beginning. And he is absolutely right. It is lawsuit material. And it's almost as if he knew. Where did that go? Oh, shoot. What number was I on? Is it here? Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me just find my place again. Here we go. It's almost as if he knew that it would lead to a lawsuit. And honestly, kudos to her. that she did, because right now in this climate, she is going to get so much backlash because people are going to give her the hardest time for simply reaching and attempting to claim something that is hers and that should be hers. I mean, look at his height just standing next to her. So you know that his wingspan as a swimmer has to be greater than hers. And the fact that she was able to tie him tells you where his level was on the men's team, quite honestly, if you want to keep it all the way real. There's no way that he was a top swimmer on the male team if he's this tall with these long limbs. I mean, his legs are up to here. It's like almost more than half her body, right? And she was still able to tie him. So, of course, this coward had to go and join the women's swim team so that he could be great. It's ridiculous. So I'm very happy for her that she's filing a lawsuit against him, as she should, as she absolutely should. Riley Gaines files $2 million suit against Leah Thomas. She took everything from me. Now, the funny thing is, I was doing some research about this lawsuit, which was filed. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted. Sorry, guys. Where the hell am I? Oh, I know. Just give me 1 second. This lawsuit was filed some weeks ago. And the funny thing is, I wasn't able to find much of anything about it. I found one article, and I'll read it to you guys now. But this was it. This was all I could find. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of have to keep my eye out for this one. But it's interesting to me because I would think that this would be front page, that this would be. But no, because it doesn't, just like the detransitioners, just like anybody who speaks out about, the LG alphabet soup community, just like anybody who speaks out about the transgender community, anything they say is put to the bottom of that priority list, for lack of a better word. So they're not going to be covering this. And I don't know why I thought different, but I guess a part of me just knowing what this means, what this implies, thought that, just simply for visibility, that news outlets would want to cover this story. But no, they don't want to because it doesn't suit their narrative, per usual. So here we go. Thomas cheated in more ways than one. Riley Gaines files $2 million lawsuit against trans swimmer Leah Thomas. What the heck? I don't know how that happened. Sorry, guys. I thought I had it. Okay, I had a feeling because I did that a little wrong, but okay. Riley Gaines, a former University of Kentucky swimmer, is suing trans woman Leah Thomas, who won the NCAA Division I championship. Last month, ESPN honored Thomas for a Women's History Month, which did not settle well with Gaines, and she tweeted about it. And it should not sit well with any woman. Honestly, it shouldn't sit well with any person, because how does he get to be labeled or get to be honored on Women's History Month when he's not a fucking woman and he still has his dick? Explain that to me. Leah Thomas is not a brave, courageous woman who earned a national title. He's an arrogant cheat who stole a national title from a hardworking, deserving woman. The NCAA is responsible. If I was a woman working for ESPN, I would walk out. You're spineless. And again, I understand her vitriol. I understand why she's so upset, and I think anyone should. Because at the end of the day, this is not okay. And to call Leah Thomas brave, courageous, it's a slap in the face of actually brave and courageous women. You're a coward. You're the opposite of brave. You would choose to step into the world of a group that is, I mean, let's be real, physically weaker than yourself and compete in a physical sport, knowing that the likelihood of you winning, of course, is way greater. And you think that that makes you brave and courageous? No. What would be brave and courageous is when you came in 100th place in the men's division, you would have went to the gym. You would have worked out. You would have kept swimming so that you could have been the top of your realm. Not put on a wig, not called yourself a woman and joined the woman's team so that you can win. That's what we call a sore loser. Riley Gaines vociferously talked about women's right. I'm usually pretty good at sounding that stuff out, but that one, yeah, not so much. Women's rights, and spoke out about feeling uncomfortable about a trans woman in the changing room. She talked about women's integrity. However, she was harassed by a student and was locked in a room for 3 hours. She was a woman. So again, here we are, quote unquote, protecting this 6'4" man who quite honestly should be able to protect himself. I'm sorry. And we're allowing him to put these women in harm's way. So much so that for her speaking out, she was targeted. Gaines claimed that she would sue the school and went on to testify about her brutal experience. In response, Leah Thomas labeled her a pampered child and took a jab at her on TikTok. So not only are you stepping into women's sports as a 6'4" man and doing your best to take over, you are a bully, sir, because you would tote that she's a pampered child because somebody, put her through an experience that was traumatic. That's ridiculous. Nonetheless, rather than responding, Gaines instructed her lawyers to file a lawsuit against Thomas for $2 million, citing her suffering from the fraud. Riley Thomas. Okay, they must have got her name wrong. So Riley claimed that Leah Thomas cheated to win the NCAA trophy and expressed her anger, claiming that she took everything from her. Gaines had been planning to contact all the athletes who competed that day against Thomas. Speaking about the fraud, Riley Gaines said, Thomas cheated in more ways than one. She took a moment I worked my entire life to achieve. Leah Thomas responded through her spokesperson, Joe Barron, stating, I earned this stalemate. I'm referring to your 5th place finish in a single event at the national championships as your defining moment. Honey, I didn't even know your name until yesterday. And in response to that, I would say to Thomas, honey, we didn't know your name until you decided to put on a wig and call yourself a woman. Because when you were competing with other men, nobody knew who the fuck you were. And that's why you felt like, maybe I should go and pretend to be a woman because I can probably get a lot further there, right? So please, let's not compare the two. At least you came in 5th and actually was competing against, people her own size. It's like they say, pick on someone your own size. She was at least picking on someone her own size. We did not give our consent, Riley Gaines said on Leah Thomas using the women's changing room. Riley Gaines and Leah Thomas have been engaged in a brutal fight for nearly a year. The former Kentucky swimmer lost her patience after the Penn swimmer shared the women's changing room, making Gaines feel uncomfortable. Leah Thomas underwent hormone replacement therapy and joined the women's team. We were not forewarned beforehand that we would be sharing a locker room with Leah. We did not give our consent. They did not ask for our consent. But in the locker room, we turned around and there's a 6'4" biological man dropping his pants and watching us undress, and we were exposed to male genitalia. Gaines added to the statement. To me, that was worse than the competition piece. Not even probably a year or 2 years ago, this would have been considered some form of sexual assault, voyeurism. But now, not even are they just allowing this to happen, it's almost as if these large organizations are encouraging it to happen, and they absolutely are. There's no other way to put it. They are encouraging it to happen. And they are pushing women out of women's spaces. They are making it very uncomfortable for women to exist within their own spaces, which is ridiculous. So it's kind of like this whole movement is not only seeking to replace women, right, with their terminology, with the, allowing these men to enter into women's spaces where they don't belong, and kind of basically making it so that the women who are there have to sit down and shut up. That's basically the sentiment, right? And not only that, but they're also, if they're not one of those men who are, inserting themselves into women's spaces, well, then they're another man who is targeting our children, who is looking to sorry, the way I was going to say that, I just can't even, who is looking to go after our kids. It's ridiculous. It's you can't tell me that this is not all a targeted attack, because in one fell swoop, you eliminate masculinity from the man, which of course is paramount in a successful family unit, but you are, with that same man, replacing women, right? Pushing them out of the family structure, pushing them out of the picture of, the nuclear family. And then again, that same man is targeting our children and doing irreversible damage. And that's not even talking about the people who are targeting our children and confusing our children to try to convince them that they're a part of this group. But if they're not doing that to our children, then they're trying to sexually exploit our children, which we know also has lasting damage. So again, you can't tell me that this is not a targeted attack. You cannot tell me that these things are not connected in some way or another. So I felt that I wanted to retouch on this subject a little bit, because when I did the show last time, I didn't really get a chance to get down and deep into it as much as I wanted to. But the more I was researching about this guy, let's see if I can find the thumbnail. The more I was researching about this guy, I realized that as far as letting them into our spaces, it doesn't stop with feminism. That's kind of where it started, honestly. But when that was allowed, letting them into our spaces, as far as our bathrooms, for an example, that was when we made our children vulnerable. That was when we also made, of course, us women vulnerable. And that was one facet where we let them into our space. And then when we let them into our spaces as far as our sports, of course, that's where we made, again, our women and our children, because they're making this so even in schools, where kids can, depending on what gender they quote unquote identify with, can participate in sports of either gender. Right? So when we as women let them into our space, we also put our kids at risk and didn't even realize it. And people are toting this whole gender, I'm sorry, wrong word, toting this whole feminism has to be trans inclusive, when making feminism trans inclusive is canceling out feminism. That's the wrong way to say it, but it is the opposite of feminism. There's no way that you can be trans inclusive, meaning including men who call themselves women, and still be a feminist. They're two different things. Right? Because again, if the feminist movement started because women were being oppressed, and now we find ourselves in a situation where women are being oppressed on such a scale that we've never even seen before, and it's not even being recognized as oppression. It's not even being recognized as disrespectful towards women. And so when that door was opened through feminism, it's kind of like we gave them an inch and they took a mile, right? We opened the door because we felt like, oh, I want to be understanding and empathetic to your cause, and I understand, and, whatever have you. And then they kicked that door open and said, you're going to be more than empathetic, and I'm going to make sure of it. You're going to no longer be a woman anymore. You're going to be a cis woman. And you're no longer a breastfeeder, you're a chest feeder, which all of this terminology I just find to be utterly ridiculous, and I think we all should. But they kicked their way into the female spaces, and we allowed it. Everyone who called themselves a feminist at some point allowed it. And we put not only, again, put ourselves at risk, but we put our children at risk. And now the only thing that we can do is to become aware of that and to continue to fight against them having any more than what they already have and continue to push back. But I do want to say that the fight is not over, and that there are plenty of states that are coming around to the idea of this being wrong and not allowing this to be sold to our children, especially at such a young age. And I wish I had saved the picture, but I believe there are 12 states right now that have laws that are limiting the quote unquote gender affirming care for kids, and 3 states that are pending. So the fight is happening. It's happening right now, real time. And sometimes when we hear all these things, it kind of feels like, is there any chance? Do we even is there any way that it's going to get any better? And I would say there's no way for us to really know, honestly, like anything. But all we can do is do our part and continue to spread the word and continue to, protect our kids and protect ourselves. So that is all I have for you guys tonight. I usually keep it pretty short. I actually thought tonight was going to be a longer show, believe it or not. Because I'm like, I got all these slides. I got all of this stuff to say. And yeah, I'm still around my normal length here. Hey, Educare. Greetings. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So yeah, that is pretty much it for me tonight. I want to thank you guys all for showing up, for coming out, showing your love. And so let me level with you guys, right? Saturdays is my night. Saturdays is when I am available. I have time. It's when I can do my show. However, more than likely, I will not be able to do a show next Saturday. I will do my best to maybe do like an upload or something like that, but I more than likely will not be live. So just giving you the heads up, because I know I've been traveling lately and there's been some weeks that I missed because I've been, I haven't been around or what have you. So just giving you guys the heads up that next week, more than likely I won't be going live, but I will do my darndest to at least upload a video so that there's some new content up next week. But again, thank you guys so much for showing up, for coming out. If you have not subscribed already, please go ahead and hit that button. Don't forget to hit the bell, because as you know, it can be a little it's spontaneous. It kind of keeps it exciting, So go ahead and hit the bell and, be on the lookout. So everybody, please have a great night. I am going to end it there. If I can remember where the freaking app is. Here we go. And okay. Yes.